Welcome to the Ashford Teaching and Learning Conference. My name is Catherine Myers, and I will be your host for this session. I'm excited to introduce Academic Integrity at Ashford University by Jeff Meyerholz, who is the Associate Director of Academic Integrity, and Joe Allen, who is the Director of Student Development Engagement, both at Ashford University. The chat window will be open during this session for your questions and comments, as well as a short Q&A at the close of this session. Now, without further ado, Jeff Meyerholz and Joe Allen.
Good morning, everybody. This is Joe. I'm here in San Diego. Jeff's in Iowa. I'm going to let Jeff take the lead and get us started.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, loud and clear.
All right, terrific. This is Jeff Meyerholz. I'm Associate Director of Academic Integrity, and I'm first going to talk about TurnItin strategies that are very common for people to basically problem solve an issue that they see within a TurnItin report. I'm also going to talk about how to follow up that TurnItin concern with an IROADS process if you feel that's the most appropriate method to cite the student, and then that will lead into Joe's conversation about the student community standards and the hearing process as a whole. Normally when an instructor first clicks into TurnItin, their TurnItin view is like this. It's the the document viewer view. Now there are different views. Down in the bottom right corner you can click on this button. It says text only view. When the instructor clicks on that, it comes up this version of the TurnItin report. Now you'll note that the percentages are the same. It's a 99%. No matter which way you look at it, you're still going to get the same percent number as an instructor. If you ever want to go back to the first view, you can click on the link here and it'll take you back to the document viewer view. You can also download the TurnItin report so you can send it to your FSDA or as part of an IROADS process, send it in, or you can even send it to the student and say this is of concern. Once you download it, it'll come up as a slightly different view, but you can still see it's a 99% match. But we're going to talk throughout this entire presentation about this view only, and it is the text-only view. So just for consistency purposes, we're just going to stick to one view. So one of the nice things about TurnItin is that we can identify that there is a large match here, 38% to another paper. I want to know whether this paper belonged to this student or another student. That will help me problem solve it. So I can request a copy of that by clicking on the link and then click on request a paper. That will be sent to the original submission instructor, and they have the opportunity then to reply and provide you with that original source paper. That will help you problem solve that. Next, there's a nice function here in a drop-down menu up at the top. And what we want to do is click on that drop-down menu and select Show Matches at One Time. And you'll notice in the right column, it just has the highest ranking matches right now in default view. What we want is all the matches at one time. So when I click on that, it shows all of the matches that are corresponding to that individual paper. Now you can see that there are papers that were submitted in August 2012, 2013, 2014. So if the student says, oh, I submitted that paper in my last class, that's just mine. Well, what would explain all the other dozens upon dozens of students that have submitted that paper? So right here should be able to help you problem solve whether this paper was previously submitted by this student or by many. So let's try it again. Submit one at a time. You can see it shows some of these matches here, 79%. We could have requested that paper, but we're going to use that Show Matches at One Time again. We click on it, and we get all these matches again over in the right column. But here's an interesting one. Notice how it's formatted just slightly different. And that is because you don't have to request this paper from another instructor. You are the original instructor. It says paper ID, so all you have to do is right-click on that, open it up in a new tab. Boom, there's the paper. And you can see on the title page who the student was that submitted it, and it was submitted to your class. And you can also download that paper for evidence right there by clicking in that little circle. So now we're going to problem solve another one. In this case, we see a large match here. It's a paper ID. We can see that that's the original paper. We can click on it that way. Or we can just problem solve by saying, hey, here's the student name, here's the instructor name. Both of them are showing up as matching. And if that shows up that way and it's in your class, odds are it's because it matches the rough draft the student submitted earlier in the course or a build-up assignment in some way. So I'd encourage you to reflect back on the previous papers the student had submitted in your course, because the odds are it's probably the same student, same course. So now let's talk about eliminating matches. Here we have a paper that's 93% match. We can see that there's a 92% match there. That's of concern, but we've narrowed it down that, okay, that is a recycled paper that the student had permission to use. So I want to eliminate that from the TurnItin report. So I click on this little X over here. And what that does is eliminate that match. It tells TurnItin, run the exact same report all over again, but ignore that match. So TurnItin runs it, and here is the new report. So we went from 92% down to 34%. But here's the thing. Let's look at the report more closely. Look at this. Question 5, question 6. The student inserted the questions and then wrote their answer, then inserted the next question, wrote their answer. So in this case, it's not really plagiarism. The student is just answering the questions that are part of the assignment. So we shared this information with the instructor, and they ended up grading the paper because they were able to problem solve that TurnItin report. So let's talk about excluding bibliography. In this case, the instructor does not like to see this 20% match. Does not like that at all. So we want to exclude the bibliography page, because you can see in the left column here that most of that is just the bibliography of the paper. So now I click on that exclude bibliography, brand new report, and it's down to 12%. And you can see in the left column there, there's also some matching to the headers and footers that are a part of the paper. So we've even narrowed it down even below that 12% if we wanted to eliminate that as well. So we also have differences between a student report and an instructor report. So when a student goes into Waypoint and submits their paper to just check for originality, what happens is it gives them a match to any source material that TurnItin can find on the web. It searches the web. It does not identify any matches to other students' papers. It also does not match it to any content that's behind a firewall that TurnItin can't get to. But the instructor, when they submit it, there's a slight difference. It does the same as the student, but it also matches to any previous paper. That's why the instructor's paper would be different than the student's paper. So why is the difference? Common question. You have to look back at why we provide the opportunity for students to use TurnItin. It's to help them correct their differences in their TurnItin report. So if it's showing it's a high match, okay, I need to cite differently. If it's showing that it matches another student's paper, they use that to actually adjust their paper to avoid plagiarism, not to fix their writing, just to avoid plagiarism. So that's why there's a difference in it. So let's talk about the differences. In this example, you can see that there's a 22% match in the right column. That's actually a block quote that we noticed later on in the paper, so we're not going to worry about that. Also over here in the left column, I highlighted a section that doesn't show up on the TurnItin report for the student as being of concern. So when the instructor runs the paper, all of a sudden we're at 90%, and that same section now is showing up as a match to another paper. So why would it show up as a match? Well, it actually matches a paper that's for sale online, and this match up here in the left column is actually matching a previously submitted paper. So now the instructor is going to probably cite the student for plagiarism, even though in the TurnItin report that the student ran, it looked like it was clean. That's why there's a difference. So we talked about that tutoring website that's out there that's selling papers. There's quite a few websites out there that are doing that. So unfortunately, we're fighting a big battle. We're working with legal and other departments to try to resolve that, but we are fighting that. So let's say we review a plagiarism as an instructor and we decide, yep, we need to do something about this. First step is instructor discretion. So we can either give warnings, we can offer opportunity to resubmit for full or partial credit, we can even give a 0. But if we want additional consequences, we'd need to follow through on the IROADS process. But as we go through this coaching, we need to make sure we always provide specific coaching to the student. Here's what I see in your paper, here's how you can fix it, and to avoid it in the future. Things that I encourage you to avoid is creating a brand new assignment, because the student should be assessed on the same content as all of the other students in the class, not on this supplemental assignment. They can rewrite the same assignment, but you shouldn't give them a totally new assignment. And also extra credit at the university is not allowed, so avoid that pitfall as well. So let's say we decide to cite the student for misconduct. We're going to submit an IROADS form. the original document that the student had submitted, and the TurnItin report. Why do we submit all this evidence? We want to know what you're seeing and why you think it's plagiarism. As much information as you can provide us, please do so because it saves us time in the investigation. So once we have a TurnItin report, this is what our office does when we receive it. We look at the TurnItin report. We see in the right column that we have a 7% match. We see in the paper that there's a big chunk there that matches. We look in the student paper. Uh-oh, there's no citation there. So we say, what does it look like in the original source material? So we go to that website. Here's the original source material. All of it matches, no citation. So here's what we do to document this plagiarism. We highlight the material on the paper. We provide the link where we found the source material, and we take a screenshot of the original source material and paste it into the original document. So that's all part of the evidence we collect. So what consequences would be applied? First incident is typically a citation letter from the university and a 0 or zeros on the assignments that have been reported by the instructor. After the student has been cited for misconduct for the first attempt or first citation from the university, any additional consequences would be considered a second incident. So if the student submits a plagiarized paper after that point in time, it could be considered a second incident and additional consequences, including failing that paper or failing that course. Third consequences would be all the above and refer to student community standards. And that is where Joe's portion of the presentation starts up.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I saw there are a couple questions in there. I didn't know if you want to jump into them now or did you want to respond after the presentation?
I will read through them and try to respond as you are presenting as well.
Perfect. All right, so Jeff gave a great overview, and I'm going to try to keep up with his enthusiasm. But so once they receive the IROADS and they verify in that third instance or the severity is sufficient enough to bring it to our office, it's going to come to the Office of Student Conduct. If you're not familiar and you've never been exposed to this office, Dolan Williams and Christina Hawkes are my two conduct officers. They do an outstanding job to facilitate the formal hearings, and I'm going to kind of give you an overview of what that process looks like once it comes into our office. So here's the mission of our Office for Student Conduct, and the goals of our process is to provide the student with a fair process, the opportunity to be heard, the opportunity to review the exhibits that are charged against them, to protect the integrity of the university, and then to serve the developmental needs of the students. The three areas broken down what it looks like: catalog compliance. If you want to read Section 2 of the catalog, feel free. That's a breakdown of how our process operates, the timeline students are responsible for, what we prevent inappropriate behavior. Mostly we're going to talk about academic integrity today, but know that our office also addresses behavior in the classroom that's disruptive and threatening or concerning. So feel free to contact SCS for those issues as well. And then the developmental sanctions, educational process, and we worked really, really well at the Writing Center, so thank you to Lorna and her team. Chandra was with us, and she created some great sanctions and opportunities for students to write reflective papers that have rubric and some accountability designed in them. What it looks like for student misconduct in the online modality: integrity looks like academic integrity, furnishing false or forged information. The top 5 standards are at in the black bar at the top of this: in electronic mail abuse, community, disruption of the university process, fairness, respect, threatening and verbal abuse, discrimination, intimidation, harassment, and responsibility is violation of federal, state, and local laws. Every time Jeff refers the students over to our office, Dolan and Christina will work with our Student Community Standards Committee to arrange for 3 faculty and staff to speak with the student during a formal hearing. And once again, we'll determine responsibility and or sanctioning. For Jeff's referrals, his office already determined responsibility. The academic dishonesty has been verified by their team in their review. So basically at that point, we're looking at the most appropriate sanctioning depending on the severity of the offense. With that, there's an attachment at the top right of the screen if you want to open this up. It's a really just breakdown of what Section 2 in our catalog looks like, but it's a step-by-step approach to show you how the process on the right comes through our office. It's a referral. The student information will be collected. Dolan and Christina will work hard to redact all the student information on the other papers that match individuals that they happy to share their coursework materials with. The committee will be called. You're welcome to shadow, to sit in, to listen to some of these formal hearings as they take place. We've got about 80 Student Community Standards Committee members to rotate through. We do about 25, 30 formal hearings a month. But that process requires, the availability of our committee members, the availability of the student, and the availability of my staff to arrange for the timing of that meeting. Once the student speaks with the committee, they're going to have an outcome within 7 business days, most likely separation, suspension, expulsion, academic integrity program, writing tutorials. The Writing Center has great resources and materials, but it all really depends on the student severity. The beauty of Jeff's presentation is the more we can be proactive and the more interventions we can have, and the documentation that he was talking about and asking for, it's priceless, because that is what the committee is helping to determine what is the most appropriate sanction for a student who's referred to our office. Is it their first offense? Is it their 3 first papers in the classes because they really don't grasp the requirements of APA and citation? Or is it a student that Jeff's team's outreached multiple times, notating them that their papers have been found with academic dishonesty in them? The exhibits is very telling. The information of the matches, what it is, where they acquired it from, explains some of the details. Possibly is it a same address family member? Jeff and I also work with risk mitigation to prevent Title IV fraud, and that team looks at students that have similar matches in addresses, phone numbers, IP addresses, voicemails, phone numbers, everything that matches individuals. And plagiarism is always something that comes together that shows the connection between students that are enrolling for the wrong reasons. And so although we're here for developmental education in the conduct office, from time to time we will find referrals to our office that plagiarism is just a tipping point that brings to light lots of other concerns regarding their integrity and their behavior in contact with the institution and their intentions to pursue an academic degree. So I'm grateful for the committee members, for those of you on the line today that are part of that. Thank you for your service and for Dolan and Christina's work, as well as Dan, Jeff, and the entire team in the Academic Integrity Office in Iowa, because this is a lot of background investigation and details to get us the documentation that we need to share with the student, the committee members, and have that conversation with the conference line with the student to explain what are we seeing, what took place, and how did it get there. Unfortunately, it's a lot of times of students not realizing what they're doing is inappropriate. Maybe they've gotten away with it for a certain duration to where they feel that it's just appropriate from the Course Hero websites or course material that they're patchworking together into making a paper. But it's a conversation that needs to be had, and the earlier we can do that, and the earlier interventions, it can prevent us from following up with a student after they've been doing it for a long duration, incurring significant debt, significant costs to courses, and it's something that I want to be more proactive on. So thank you for the faculty on the line today that are learning how to interpret those TurnItin scores, understanding that tool and the benefit of what that looks like. I believe we're almost complete with the integration of TurnItin with the Waypoint-enabled courses, but that's your speedometer. That's your radar to at least go and look and take those steps that Jeff outlined and Jeff described in understanding what are we actually seeing here with this number, how do we actually break it down, and what is the conversation I need to have with the student to prevent this from reoccurring, but also to document it so that he's not just working me and working the 10 other instructors, because believe it or not, we've had students call in and request a different instructor to drop a course simply by an academic integrity violation because they think they're going to go and fish and test another instructor who possibly won't be so stringent in reviewing their course materials. So to the point in the previous webinar, it's priceless, and it's a community and it's a culture that we as a team will work together to address this, but know that Student Conduct's here to answer any questions, and if you ever have anything else you want to know about our offices, I'm going to leave the question here. Jeff and I are here full-time. SCS@Ashford is also another email address you might want to ask. That's where Dolan and Christina monitor. But if you have any questions at any time regarding something you're seeing in your class, something you're not clear on, know that their resources are here today and will continue to be to help support you as instructors.
Thank you, Jeff and Joe, so much. So we have about 7 minutes left for questions, so please type your questions into the chat, and Jeff and Joe can get to them.
We acknowledge many of you are typing on the line there. If you are on the Student Community Standards Committee, maybe even notate that in the chat session. It's great to see you're involved, your engagement. We find a lot of success with our remote faculty that support our Student Community Standards Committee. The partnership with the Writing Center is priceless from my lens, and I'm very fortunate to be on the 10th floor with those individuals as they help to partner with some of our students that just need a little clarity and a little understanding. Thanks, Lynn. Debbie, yeah, thanks for calling out the 103 course and highlighting that information and the literacy and the requirements of that.
Lisa, you brought up the idea of more resources to help interpret TurnItin reports. There is actually a video currently within the Help Now gallery to help students understand the TurnItin report. You can actually send the students the link to that video, which would help. But we're also trying to work on new and refreshed Help Now videos that we can insert into the classroom. So as they're getting ready to submit a paper or to interpret a TurnItin report, they can look at that and say, okay, help me understand it. This helps. Thank you.
And Jeff, Dr. Michelle Rosser-Majors, I don't know if you saw that, she was just talking about the failure rates in the courses and how that's always a concern. Is there a way to check to see if it's a plagiarism situation that has caused the failure or the actual performance with the content?
We usually do not get very many questions about that. What I'd recommend is if you have a question on a student's progress in a class, you might be able to visit with your FSDAs. They can help you see whether the student was pulled out of the class. Usually there's two reasons why students are retaking a class, because I think that's what Michelle's concern is. If they're retaking a class, it's because they failed because of academic things, and it could be plagiarism, or the other one is that they've experienced a hardship during that time and they withdrew from the class. And your FSDA can help sort of problem solve that, give you a little bit of background. What we don't want you to do is say the student had a plagiarism concern in the first attempt. We don't want you to automatically blackball that student and say, I'm going to micro-analyze everything that you submit because I know you had that problem before. Treat them still as a unique student and willing to help them in their writing because maybe they had a setback, but they do possibly want to still learn and have that feedback from you. So even though you're asking for that information, use it with a grain of salt and still provide that student with a fresh start and an opportunity. Hope that makes sense.
Wonderful dialogue that's happening in the chat box. Thank you all. Thank you, Lynn, for helping respond to some of these questions.
I will add something real quick. One of the concerns was in TurnItin, or I'm sorry, in Waypoint, when you click on the link, it takes a little bit of time for the report to come up. We're currently testing an automated system, so as soon as the student submits the paper into Waypoint for grading, TurnItin runs the report. So as you as the instructor go into Waypoint to assess that paper, the score is already there. You just have to click on the link and open up the report. So that would save you guys quite a bit of time. We're just running a pilot program with that right now and hopefully have it live here in the next few months or so.
Thank you again to Jeff Meyerholz and Joe Allen for your presentation, as well as to all of you for participating. This presentation will be available for viewing in the CEDL soon, and we will also send out an email when the live sessions are available. Don't forget to go to the TLC app and rate this session, and then use the link in the room, on the bottom of your screen below the presentation, for a quick end-of-session survey. And finally, be on the lookout for the end-of-conference survey to provide more in-depth feedback. Thank you all again, and have a wonderful day.